So today I'm gonna bring to your attention what's known as the Mann Act, right? And you see, a lot of things they didn't tell the people in terms of what slavery was and what it was really about. Okay, they like to just spread the narrative that it was only one set of people that was so-called enslaved or in slavery, which most of the time was just indentured servitude. But I'm just gonna bring to your attention this act, right, which is also called the White Slave Traffic Act, right? So a lot of times you hear about black, quote unquote, black slavery, Black History Month, black, whatever, blah blah blah, which is actually nonsense. But they divert from these facts that there was also so-called white slavery as well. Okay, so the Mann Act, also known as the White Slave Traffic Act, okay, also called the Mann Act, is a United States federal law passed June 25, 1910. It is named after Congressman James Robert Mann of Illinois. Okay, so see other short titles: White Slave Act, White Slave Traffic Act of 1910. Long title: An act to further regulate interstate and foreign commerce by prohibiting the transportation therein for immoral purposes of women and girls and for other purposes. Nicknames White Slave Traffic Act. Mind you, people, the trafficking, the human trafficking that was taking place during this time, right? It was mostly, I would say, the majority of the trafficking that was taking place was so-called white women and white girls, little girls, right? They were taken as slaves, right? And this is where you get your interstate commerce, your regulate commerce. This is how Congress regulate commerce, through the Constitution, right? They have the powers within the Constitution to regulate commerce, right? So if you are not in the proper standing or status, your person may or can be regulated by the agencies or agents, right? And that's why they take advantage of you, right? And then they themselves is now interfering with they're now tapping into human trafficking themselves, because yes, they put the statute in place to prevent it, but at the same time they're using it to take advantage of people, if you know what I mean. So, White Slave Traffic Act, enacted the 61st United States Congress, effective June 25th, 1910. Oh, and also, this is where also the term "all crimes are commercial" stems from. Okay, from this white slave, because if you read, I think it's title 27 about commercial crime. Types of commercial crimes, you'll find that white slave is also one of those crimes, okay? Titles a minute: 8 USC, aliens and nationality. 18 USC, crimes and crime procedure. Right? Introduced in the House as H.R. 12-315 by James Robert Mann. Signed into law by President William Howard Taft on June 25th, 1910, okay? So this is a newspaper clip of, if you see, it's a wanted 60,000 girls to take the place of 60,000 white slaves who will what's that, oil? I can't make that word up, but this year. But look, pay attention to this right here. Wanted 60,000 girls to take the place of 60,000 white slaves. Okay? Alright. So, why isn't that these things aren't spoken about in the so-called academia of the public institutions? That's just my thing. I'm not here to bash so-called white people, because as I said, I have nothing against people from different backgrounds, right? We are here on earth for purpose, you know, so we can't be hating on people because of their skin color or whatever. And that nonsense. I'm not with that nonsense, but it's just to bring to your attention of the facts, right? The actual facts that's not discussed. Okay? In its original form, the act made it a felony to engage in interstate or foreign commerce transport of any woman or girl for the purpose of prostitution or debauchery, or for any other immoral purpose. Its primary stated intent was to address prostitution, immorality, and human trafficking, particularly where trafficking was for the purposes of prostitution. It was one of several acts of protective legislation aimed at moral reform during the progressive era. In practice, its ambiguous language about immorality resulted in it being used to criminalize even consensual sexual behavior between adults. It was amended by Congress in 1978 and again in 1986 to limit its application to transport for the purpose of prostitution or other illegal sexual acts. Like, you know, like they do the human trafficking, you know, they take little girls or little boys, you know, they take them from like the so-called third world countries, bring them here or other places, and they use those people till this day. It's going on. They use these little children as they abuse them. You know what I'm saying? Really abuse them. You know, and a lot of times it's the people who are in the government that is doing these things. Okay. So let me see. So we're going to go into promotion. In the 19th century, many of America's cities had designated legally protected areas of prostitution, and increased urbanization as well as greater numbers of young women entering the workforce led to greater flexibility in courtship without supervision. It was in this changing social sphere that concern over white slavery, as I just showed you in that picture right there, they said they wanted 60,000 girls or women to replace 60,000 white slaves. So who were the 60,000 white slaves? You know what I'm saying? So, you know, this actually destroys the narrative of saying dark-skinned people are slaves, because here they actually had something in place to stop white slavery because it was getting out of hand, right? Okay? This term refers to women being kidnapped for the purpose of prostitution and derives from Charles Sumner's 1847 description of the Barbary slave trade. Now, what was the Barbary slave trade? Remember, you had the Barbary wars, okay? Remember, you had the Barbary wars. I did a video on this earlier on the channel about the Barbary wars. So what was really happening? What was really going on? Because if you had 60,000 white slaves, right, and then they're comparing to the Barbary slave trade, and what was the Barbary slave trade? You know what I'm saying? I could go into it, right? The Barbary slave trade refers to slave markets on the Barbary coast of North Africa, which include the Ottoman provinces of Algeria, Tunisia, and Tripolitania, my bad, and the independent Sultanate of Morocco. So this is where you get your treaty. That is what the so-called Moors like to talk about, treaty of peace, whatever they call it, right? This is where this came into play, right? Because they were actually, whatever was happening, the United States wanted to be immune from being pirated by the Barbary ships, right? Are protected from them. So they signed a treaty. So what was happening really? Was it that they was taking white slaves from North Africa? This is why in the application you see white, right? Could also mean people from North Africa, also from Europe, okay? Southern Europe or Europe itself, okay? Because Europe and Africa is pretty much on the same landmass, really, when you check it out. So who were the slaves, really? You know what I'm saying? Because it's documented here. Numerous communities appointed vice commissions to investigate the extent of local prostitution, whether prostitutes participated in it willingly or were forced into it, and the degree to which it was organized by the cartel-type organizations. The second significant action at the local level was to close the brothels and the red light districts from 1910 to 1913, city after city changing previous tolerant approaches and forced the closing of their brothels. Opposition to openly practice prostitution had been growing steadily throughout the last decades of the 19th century. The federal government's response was the Mann Act. The purpose of the act was to make it a crime to transport or cause to be transported for aid to assist in obtaining transportation or to persuade, induce, entice, or coerce a woman to travel. Many of the changes that occurred after 1900s were a result of tension between social ideals and practical realities. Family form and functions changed in response to a complex set of circumstances that were the effects of economic class and ethnicity. Okay? So, as I showed you earlier, so ice cream parlors of the city and food stores combined, largely run by foreigners, are the places where scores of girls have taken their first step downwards. Does her mother know the character of the place and the man she is with? So this is like how they induce the girls, the white girls, okay? Yeah, so